Okay, well, I'm going to get started. My name is Jen. For anyone that is a first timer at the 2025 Wild Horse Advocacy Summit, just bear with me. I'm still admitting a couple of people in from the waiting room. So we are on our second day now, which is pretty awesome. If you are new here, hope that you're in the right place. This is our 2025 Wild Horse Summit. We are putting the A in advocacy, arming yourself with knowledge to effectively advocate in 2025. And we have such a stellar roster of presenters. I'm really excited to be moderating today for this one. The summit is being presented by Chasing Horses Wild Horse Advocates and by Save Our Wild Horses, and moderated by the Wild Narrative Project. And our presenter for right now, for this hour, is Viktoria Kirchoff. She is based in Australia. Everybody give her a high five for being on, on Zoom at 9 a.m. her time on a Saturday. All right, so Viktoria is based in Sydney. She serves as Fondation.
Yes, that's the
Thank
French spelling.
My French is terrible.
Getting better.
Franz Weber, Weber's representative in Australia and project manager for two exceptional sanctuaries, the Wild Horse Sanctuary Bonrook in Australia and the Abused Horse Sanctuary Equidad in Argentina. In addition to her work in Australia and Argentina, Viktoria is in charge of the German edition of the Foundation's quarterly magazine, Journal Franz Weber, and collaborates with the team in Bern, Switzerland on campaigns and social media activities. How many languages do you speak?
Well, I would say 3.5. So I speak German is my mother tongue, English, Spanish pretty good, and French, yeah, it's okay.
Awesome. So driven by a lifelong passion for animal protection, Viktoria initially built a strong foundation in business through roles at a major healthcare company in Basel?
Yeah, Basel, Switzerland, yes.
All right, great. I'm just leaning into this because I would like to hear how you're pronouncing things. Switzerland and the United Nations World Food Program in Rome, Italy, where she gained invaluable and diverse experience. Her commitment to animal welfare deepened after volunteering for projects in Thailand and Japan, eventually leading her to transition to the foundation, the Fondation Franz Weber, and at its headquarters in Bern and later in Sydney. So she holds a bachelor's degree in business and economics at the University of Basel and a certificate in film production and digital media from the University of California, Los Angeles. So almost without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to you. I just want to remind everyone here that this is a supportive environment. So let's keep our comments positive. Let's keep them on track with what Viktoria is presenting today. And we welcome questions once she wraps up her presentation. So please add them in the chat. Make sure when you're adding a question in the chat that you are messaging everyone. I think it says meeting group chat. So make sure you're doing that. And we'll have Viktoria talk to us and have a great conversation when she wraps her presentation. And now over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Jen, for the introduction. And thank you everyone for having me here today. This is great. So welcome everyone to my presentation about Fondation Franz Weber's Wild Horse Sanctuary Bonrook in the Northern Territory, Australia. So yes, okay, I'm going to dive right into it. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background information about the Fondation Franz Weber, also abbreviated as FFW.
Hey, Jen.
So it's.
I think that you need to switch. I think that you need to switch so that she can screen share.
Okay, that would be good.
Oh, good.
I'm seeing hers, but here we go. I have now stopped my screen share. Or maybe not.
No, you have. I can see it says about Fondation Franz Weber now on the screen. Is that correct, Viktoria? That's what you want up there?
Yep, that's the next slide.
We're good to go.
Okay, great.
Yeah, okay. Okay, also, can you see the picture to the right, which is a picture of Franz Weber from like the 80s?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you see? Okay, good. All right, so Fondation Franz Weber, also abbreviated as FFW, is a Swiss animal welfare and nature preservation non-for-profit organization based in Switzerland. It was founded back in 1975 by the Swiss ecologist Franz Weber. And he led the organization, supported very closely by his wife, Judith Weber, until 2014, when then their daughter, Vera Weber, took over the organization. So here a photo of Franz and Judith back in 1989 in Australia. So a bit more background. So since 2014, the organization has been led by their daughter, Vera Weber, who is now the current CEO and president of FFW. We do have offices in Bern and Montreux, Switzerland. And we manage a diverse range of projects and campaigns across Switzerland and globally to protect animals and nature, including, and I'm just mentioning a few, so the Wild Horse Sanctuary Bonrook in Australia, then the rescued or abused horse sanctuary Equidad in Argentina. And then we manage projects to protect unique landscapes and forests globally, and also campaigns against bullfighting and many more initiatives. So I will give at the end the link to our website. So if you have more interest, you can look and read more about all our projects. On the right, I don't know if you can see it now because I think it's blocking here. Let me just, if I move this, does that help? Yeah, can you see the picture now?
We can see
So
the picture.
On the right side is, that's Vera, so my boss in the middle, and her parents, Judith and Franz. So both her parents have passed away since, and so Vera is doing it all by herself. In leadership. So the next slide. Sorry, I'm just, okay, that's going better. So just a bit of background. So in the late 1980s, Franz Weber was contacted for help regarding the Australian government organized helicopter shootings, so the brutal massacres of thousands of Brumbies. And so the foundation exposed the Brumby massacres to the world, and it was he launched an international campaign which brought global attention to this cruelty. And then in November 1989, FFW purchased an old cattle ranch, which is called Bonrook Station in the Northern Territory. And he transformed it to the Franz Weber Territory, kind of like a game with words, which then became a safe haven for Brumbies and native species. And just a bit of background on this. So until 2004, Bonrook also featured a hotel and a restaurant. And until 2008, also it turned then into a bed and breakfast until 2008. And they offered commercial horseback riding until 2010. But so for the last 15 years, there has been no restaurant, no hotel, no bed and breakfast, no lodge, and no horseback riding on Bonrook. So it just is a pure horse sanctuary. So no tourism. So what is the Wild Horse Sanctuary Bonrook? It is located 2.5 hours south of Darwin, which is in the Northern Territory, which is a state in the north of Australia. And it's near the township Pine Creek, so a little town in Australia. And it spans over 495 square kilometers. And just to give that into perspective for the Americans, people from the US, it is about 11 miles by 17 miles. Protected, fenced, natural bushland. So it's a very, very, very big area. And it's owned and fully funded by donations raised by Fondation Franz Weber. So, okay. Okay, I just want to, can I make this smaller? No, sorry. I'm trying to make this smaller. So is this better? I'm trying so that you can see the picture.
I can see the photo immediately when you bring up the slide. I see, yeah, it looks like everybody can see it. I don't think you have to make any changes. I think we're good.
Okay. Do you still see it now? So
Yes.
you see the slides.
Mhm.
Okay. So I guess it doesn't mean what exactly what I see. Okay, sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay. So, okay, wildlife on Bonrook. We have about 800 brumbies on our land that roam freely in their family groups, undisturbed and unhandled. And I really want to focus on that again. Like, we are not touching these wild horses. We can get about 50 meters close to the horses. So what is that? Yeah, so 50 meters. So that until they run off. So they're really wild and they cannot be handled. We also have about 120 wild cattle, about 100 water buffaloes, and over 150 different bird species, and numerous native species of wildlife, including rare native species. And all these animals live in harmony on Bonrook. So on the right side, you see a picture, and actually I took this from a helicopter because we did a aerial count in October 2023. So myself and our station manager, Sam Forward, who I will talk about a bit later in more detail, and a pilot who was flying us for over 8 hours over our land in grid lines to count all our animals. And it was in the dry season, so the most ideal weather to do this, because there's not a lot of water sources and there's not a lot of bush like that's thick. You can see it's very dry. So we were able to see the animals very well, and we did a very as exact as possible counting. Of course, there's always like a 10% margin of error, but we can safely say that we counted this very diligently and meticulously. Then a few photos just to give a bit of a perspective. So these are actually photos that all I took personally. And so these are all different mobs of our brumbies. And as you can see, yeah, they're beautiful, graceful, and wonderful. Then and also some photos about other animals that live in harmony with our horses. So on the left, you will see a parrot, which is, he actually nests in termite mounds. Then on the top right, you see some wild cattle. On the top left, you see an old bull, an old bull. In the middle, some water buffaloes, a little water buffalo family. And on the right side, a jabiru, which is like a black stork. And so here, so the hooded parrot is native to Australia, and also the stork is native to Australia. Then the next slide, also some more pictures. This is on the left, we have the northern brown snake, very dangerous, deadly snake. And on the top right, the frill-neck lizard. And these are both native animals to Australia, and they came back just about a couple of years ago back onto our land. So our station manager has not seen them for 20 years on our land, and they just came back. So also shows that our land is very healthy and good, and it's all in good balance, and that these animals are coming back to the country. Then also, of course, we have kangaroos, we have wallabies, and then also in the middle, you see a very rare animal, which is the northern quoll. And it's actually very rare, and it is also to be found on our land and also native. And then also on the right side, the Golden finch, which is also a rare bird, also native, and also to be found on Bonrook. And then the last few pictures here, this is on the left side, a bird's nest, and that's the nest of a bowerbird. So so it's not on the right side, it's an emu. So don't confuse that. That's not the right bird for this nest. But just to show, and he nests on the ground, and he makes like these spectacular nests with like little trinklets and things and shiny things, sometimes also like shards and bones and here shells to attract the female. And so he nests on the ground, and in 35 years that our station manager has been on the land, or 30 years, almost 30 years he's been on the land, he's never seen a destroyed nest. So which also goes to show that horses would not run through nests like this. And on the right side, you see an emu, which is also native to Australia and which we also see rarely, but we have seen it on our land. So then ecological balance on Bonrook. So every 3 years, the Northern Territory Government Department of Lands, Planning and Infrastructure conducts health checks of Bonrook's land. And consistently, we have been getting the ratings of very good to good. So this proves, actually given by a government institution, that the horses have no negative impact on native flora or fauna. I think that's a very important point to make. A lot of people ask, how is it possible that your population of your horses doesn't explode? Like, for example, when we have here examples about the Kosciuszko National Park, here in New South Wales, Australia, where the current shootings are going on of the Brumbies, where they are claiming that the population of the horses is exploding. They have 18,000 horses and all this. And what we can say, so we have a stable Brumby population, and we've had this over the past 35 years. And that is due to seasonal climate challenges. So we have a harsh subtropical environment in the Northern Territory, and that naturally regulates the population and keeps it at a stable level. So which means there's it's like 5 different seasons in the Northern Territory, and it goes from very dry to like flooding. So there's strong seasons, and of course that means there is, it's harsh, and sometimes there's not a lot of food for them to find, and that balance it naturally. Also, the horses have natural predators such as dingoes, because we don't kill any animals on our land. Again, compared to Kosciuszko National Park, where for years they have been killing any natural predator of horses, like such as dingoes. And if you mess up the biodiversity, then you may get an imbalance, right? So best is to not touch it. So the dingoes, are a natural predator for foals or weak horses or older horses, and that also contributes to the equilibrium. And then the third point, in 2006, we actually had an equine dentist come to our land, and he announced about a year before that he was going to come and to measure the teeth of Brumby skeletons. So Sam was, over the years, I was station manager, over that year, like looking at where he could see, find like a skeleton of a horse, and he would exactly remember, point out where they were. So when the dentist came, they did a tour around. He counted 30 Brumby skeletons' teeth and measured them, and the average age was about 15 years. So, which shows it's like they naturally have a shorter lifespan than like domestic horses, which is usually what, around 25. So then management of Bonrook. This is a picture of our station manager, Sam Forward. And he has been our manager since 1996. And just to put that in perspective, I've been working with him since 2020. So for the past like 5 years. And I have been working for the organization since 2015, so 10 years. So Sam's responsibility include to maintain the 95 kilometers boundary fence. So that's about 59 miles of boundary fence. And he ensures that there is sufficient water sources. So in the last few years, we built a couple of new bores or drilled new bores and also a dam. He ensures that the brumbies receive mineral and salt blocks. So that's the only real kind of interaction in a way, because the land is on very poor soil. It's like granite sand. So in certain seasons, so especially in the dry season, that's when he put it out. The grass is just too poor and doesn't have any minerals, so he puts that out. Then also we collaborate with indigenous groups, and that's in like one big project that we have with them is to relocate neighboring brumbies to Bonrook. And we do that by using one-way gates. And you will see a picture in a second. And that's just to transfer them because there are horses outside of our sanctuary, and that could also be sometimes could be an escapee basically from our side that's going onto the neighboring land, or there's horses from other areas just coming close by. And so when we have the one-way gates, they can come into our land, they're in safe ground, and they can't go back out. And also what Sam does is land surveillance supported by trail cameras and drone. And he manages the fire safety with controlled burn-offs. And that is very important because, yeah, there is definitely fire risk in this area due to the droughts. Also, Sam rescues and relocates unwanted brumbies from the area to Bonrook. That means whatever is not connected to huge amounts of or very lengthy transports. So whatever is kind of in the area, he will like load them and bring them to Bonrook. Like we had a little foal coming from like an orphan foal from Tiwi Islands, which is north of Darwin, that was found. It was a Brumby foal. There was no mother found. It was like 2 days or 3 days old, and people contacted us, and he organized the transfer and brought this little foal to Bonrook. Also, currently, Sam cares for about 15 rescue and orphan horses at the homestead. So that includes, for example, that foal. It's not a foal anymore now, Tiwi, and 14 other horses. And they are, yeah, mainly either old riding horses from people that didn't want these horses anymore, so domestic horses, or also a little mob of brumbies that have become very kind of tame. They're still, you can't touch them, but they like the food, and so they're with us. Like by the homestead. And the next slide. So here you can see a photo that has been taken by, and this actually covers like 2 things here. So you can see the mineral salt blocks. You can also see how dry the ground here is. And then also the boundary fence. So with the picket fence and the barbed wires, and then a one-way gate. And it's really interesting that this horse is standing there, right, about to enter our land. And then just an example of another rescue story. This is Alien that was, he's a Brumby, and he was found roaming around, emaciated in the Pine Creek in the little township. And Sam was alerted and informed that this horse is walking around and it's really dangerous because there is like a big highway, the Stewart Highway right there. And so actually on a trip when I was up there, we then managed to get him onto a transporter, like a trailer, and put him onto Bonrook. And on the right side, you can see that was after 3 months, how beautifully fat and healthy he looks. He's quite old. He cannot be touched. He allows you to go maybe 3 meters to him. And then he makes a lot of like noises, yeah, the big stallion movements, and he will walk away. So he cannot be handled. But we feed him every day. So then another few photos. These are the other rescue or orphan horses that live around the homestead. So you can see we're feeding them here with hay, and they're grazing, and they look really healthy and beautiful. You can also see the different, so these photos were taken in different seasons. So where on the left side, it was during the dry season. So there's basically no grass here. And on the right side, it's like all this fresh, lush grass. So why does Bonrook matter? So we are a unique sanctuary. We are actually the only sanctuary in Australia housing a significant population of brumbies. And just to mention here, Australia is just as big as the USA, country or size-wise. And so this is the only sanctuary there is in Australia. Also, it's a legacy of compassion. For 35 years, we've been offering safety and dignity to wild horses, and it is definitely a model for harmony. It demonstrates that brumbies can harmoniously coexist with native wildlife and ecosystems. And based on our 35 years of experience, Fondation Franz can confirm that wild horses pose no threat to Australian native flora or fauna. So thank you very much for your attention and your interest in the brumbies and their well-being. So if you have any questions, well, we're going to have a little discussion now, obviously, but also here's my contact details. You can send me an email directly to Viktoria Kirchoff at ffw.ch. Also, if you want to learn more about Bonrook, there is the link to our project page. And also, if you want to learn more about Fondation Franz Weber's projects and campaigns, here's the link to our other initiatives and projects. So
This
with that,
has been awesome, Viktoria. My eyes have been opened. I love it. I personally know very little about the brumbies. I know that they are under attack, and I'm sure that this was not terribly accurate, but The Man from Snowy River is my only reference, which is a movie from probably the late 80s. And so thank you for sharing more with us, especially those of us that are in the United States that haven't had the pleasure of visiting Australia. We do have several questions, so it's on my list. I'm sure it's on a lot of our lists. Okay, great. So I'm going to start asking some questions that I've delivered. Barbara is curious if there are any predators other than the dingoes.
No, actually, that's really the only ones. We actually don't have foxes on our land. That's just due to the natural. It's not like we do any fox killing campaigns, where they actually exist a lot in Australia as well. Foxes are also considered invasive, and there's big campaigns in this country. I mean, this country basically kills everything. So it's actually a big problem. The other thing is we don't have also big wild cats. That's another thing, like more in Western Australia they exist. There's big killing campaigns against them as well in Australia. We don't have that. We have a little, maybe here and there, a wild cat, but they're small. They wouldn't be a predator, no.
And can you talk a little bit more about why the killing campaigns? Is it conflict with livestock? Is it conflict with local communities? What's the history behind that?
Yeah, this is actually a very big topic, and it's like opening probably a big can of worms. And I think there's a lot of different opinions out there, but there's opinions out there that say, well, Australia has like this killing culture, and like whatever is not considered native gets killed. But then on the other hand, so certain like native animals, for example, like kangaroos, also get killed and even harvested for meat. So there's like this contradiction in itself. So it's in one way trying to conserve and keep the native animals, but then in other ways killing them anyway. Or like even there were in the 60s, of course now my mom is calling me. There are even examples like in the 60s where they would kill like all kinds of native animals here. So I think it's kind of like a legacy, and it's of course they have these arguments that or why is this actually happening? Now this threw me off that my mom is calling me twice
No,
in this
that's okay. That
presentation.
sounds like
So,
something that would happen to me as well. We were just talking about
um,
legacy and opinions.
yeah, and it seems there's definitely there's other. I mean, I think it has something to do with cattle industry as well. Like cattle's are just as invasive as or as not invasive. I don't want to even use that word. Sorry, delete that. They're non-native to this country as horses. They also came with the first fleet in like what 1779 or 89, which is also when the first white man came here. So also, I feel like the argument that they're bringing the horses are not native. Well, they're not. They're just not as native as the country. You know, if you look at it, like they came here and took the land from Aboriginals, and it just keeps on going. And like whatever is too much, too many of these, they just kill. And it's too many of these, they kill them, and then it creates that non-balance actually. So like what we see now at Kosciuszko National Park, I don't know if anyone had presented on this. I think Marilyn Nussky was supposed to talk about this, the presentation before me, but I think she had canceled. So just a little bit background on that, because that's a big problem right now in Kosciuszko National Park here in New South Wales. So that's a different state in Australia. And there are opinions out there saying like, well, because they mismanaged the park for 20 years by killing natural predators like dingoes and foxes and everything, so that then the population of the horses increased. Well, maybe they're also inflating the numbers to something that's not even true. They're saying there's over 18,000 horses, and over the next 3 years, they wanted to kill and shoot 15,000 horses. So it's a very big topic, and it's a big problem. And yeah, and well, we do what we can, and of course it's but also we cannot catch these wild horses and bring them to Bonrook. Like that's impossible as well, because the Kosciuszko National Park is like very different climate. It's from like Spain to Russia, you know, it's like a very big distance and very different climate. So they have snow there where we are in the subtropics. And, you know, and also how do you transport a bunch of wild horses? Like it's very difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And just
very
going back to
interesting.
legacy and all the challenges, know that Australia isn't alone. America's dealing with a lot of that hypocrisy, I would say, as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
So actually, somebody asks, how do you get a Brumby on a trailer for transport, or is that just not a thing?
Yeah, no, which we did, for example, with the horse. Well, actually, we named him Dandy, so the paint. That one was though easier because he's really old and he was emaciated. He had like no energy. He was just really like he just did basically almost what we wanted him to do. But even that took about, I would say, 2 hours. So that as an example. So what we did, we built like these panels around. So first of all, so he was walking around in the township, and then a friend of our station manager kind of lured him into a yard of like the local fire station. And it was like, and that's one of the picture on the left that you saw earlier, which is fenced but quite big. And then we built these panels with like a little yard with these mobile panels, and took a big rope. And then it was like Sam and I actually trying to have the rope around him, and then kind of like lead him passively towards that newly built gate. And then it's like a bigger gate, and then so we close that. He was in, and then it's like that thing, and from there another little one, and then we had about 3 men, so friends of Sam's helping, went into that first yard, and then kind of pushed him over into the smaller yard. And then there was the trailer attached to it. And so the next opening was the trailer. And then is that what you say actually in English, trailer?
Mm-hmm.
The transport
yeah, a trailer.
yeah. And then again with the rope, behind him. And actually I have footage of him like kicking and just like not wanting to go up. But then eventually he actually walked up. And then once he was in, quickly close it. But then you have to be I was there like praying that he's not going to have a panic attack, because horses don't like confined spaces. And it's already, I mean, it's hard already to load a domestic horse. Like I grew up horseback riding and with horses, and it was always the biggest horror if you had to transport a horse somewhere and put it in the trailer. They never really wanted to do that. It's not in their nature. It's absolutely unnatural. But that one was possible mainly because he was probably so tired and no energy. But then also we have another mob of four, well, they're not really original Brumbies. They probably were at some point domesticated, but they were living in the wild probably for the last 15 years or 10 years, maybe more like 10 years. And they were also in Pine Creek. And Sam was contacted that these horses are kind of like roaming around there and even like close to or even crossing the highway. And so he did a similar thing by himself. And then they went up and maybe because they remembered somehow that they were at one point handled, they were fine, especially when they're in the group together, they were fine in a big trailer. That was actually a bigger transport truck.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Question.
Okay, I'm going to transition to, we've got several questions that have to do with communication. So there's a question here from Cecile. How is this message that the the Brumbies pose no threat to flora and fauna, how is that message communicated to the public, I assume?
Well, we communicate this in our quarterly magazines, for example. So we have a quarterly magazine written in German and in French. So every 3 months from the organization, we communicate it there, making it very clear that this is possible. And there has been currently a media ban in Australia to talk about Brumbies. So no journalist will talk anything about it. That's why the public actually doesn't even know. Most people don't even know here that these shootings are going on. The park has been closed and they're just doing this.
And is the media ban coming from the government or from the park? How does that work?
No, that's the government as much. Yeah, I mean, I think so.
Yeah. And has your government recently, just really quick, changed hands or leadership, or is this?
This has been for a while, yeah. And actually, yeah, I have to say, like, I'm not the expert on Kosciuszko National Park or like on the Snowy Mountain Brumbies. That's actually more Marilyn, like she would know because she's been working on that for 20 years, like, or 25 years. She's like a really certain, she's a lawyer, so she would know like all the answers of like what exactly the background there is, where I'm really more Northern Territory Brumbies. Yeah, well, I try to answer as much as I can.
So speaking of Bonrook,
Jen, can I just intercept just for a minute?
Please.
So everybody knows Marilyn was going to present and something came up and she really regretfully had to withdraw from the summit. She was extremely excited about being here. She was really looking forward to it. And we did offer to her that whenever she's available, we'll do a horse talk with her separately and she can share her presentation and we'll put that up on our YouTube channel also. So that'll help a little bit, I hope, kind of bridge the gap between where Viktoria is and Marilyn is.
Yeah, I think that would be definitely very helpful because she is such a well of knowledge. Like she knows this all very well.
Awesome. Okay, so speaking of Bonrook, where you have spent a lot of time and are the expert, can you talk about the native flora there? So just giving you the quick juxtaposition, a big topic and issue in the United States is the same question or misinformation or disinformation around the wild horses causing destruction, whether they do or whether they don't, depends on who and what agency you talk to and where you're getting your information. And we have cheatgrass, which is invasive. We have sagebrush, which is a large, is largely an ecosystem where a lot of our wild horses are. So I'm curious, what does that native flora look like in the area where you are?
So there is yeah, a lot of native like eucalyptus and like there's definitely some invasive trees like neem trees and stuff, but yeah, so it's lots of flowers, and it's depending on the season. And yeah, also actually we have been contacted multiple times by a beekeeper he wanted to put his bee hives on our land, which we can't do because we're not really supporting the whole bee industry and the honey making, because it's another issue. But that just shows that our land is untouched and we don't have obviously any pesticides and nothing, that he wanted to put his Australian native bees these bees there. And because it's this natural, untouched native flowers and flora.
And so just grasses that the brumbies eat. They don't get into.
Yeah, they eat grass and leaves as well from the trees, and yeah, that's it.
Okay.
And it's I mean, sometimes when you look at certain seasons, like the dry season, you would think like there's almost like no food, you would think, because it looks really dry, but there's still just dried up grass that they can eat. And then they do slim down, but that's normal. Like they slim down, you see sometimes, and we have certain photos as well where you can see some ribs, I mean, but it's still fine. Because I mean, actually, if you look at some of the horses from the domestic side here, I mean, they're actually a bit overweight. They shouldn't actually be that big. So so when it's funny, like when we see an animal that you see some bones, everyone's like right away thinking like they're too thin, but that's actually how it should be. So it's normal for them to slim down at certain, and they're used to these horses, that they're like seasonal. And then when it's a lot of fresh grass, when it's raining, the rainy season, which is actually happening right now, they really fatten up again and then they slim down again. So they go through these cycles, and that is absolutely normal for them.
Okay. Barbara has a question. She asks, with the use of, I assume it's called 1080 poison in various places, do you have worried that poison animals can get onto your property before they die?
So that if we're worried about that, they would come onto our property and then, so I don't understand the question exactly. If you might.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Barbara, if you're there, if you could clarify, you can either speak up, take yourself off mute and speak up, or rephrase your question, and maybe we can get back to that. I'm not hearing from Barbara at the moment. Okay, I'm going to ask you one more question. So what do you see as a challenge for Bonrook presently, whether it's navigating as a sanctuary or refuge, or whether it's got to do with policy affecting the whole country or your state, and what are your plans to navigate that challenge?
Well, I mean, funding, I think, is our big problem. Like we've been funding this, and it's really expensive, for 35 years. And we're not a massive, big animal welfare organization. And so that's definitely a struggle, the finances. Other than that, like we're safe on the land. Like we have a pastoral lease for many, many years. So it's like it is our land. So it's not like the government can come and like down or anything. So that's not it. So we can do what we want on this land, and we're going to continue doing this. But it's more like finances at some point, at times.
Yeah, that's
So-
understandable. And we can, through these links that you've provided, we can go and learn more about donating if anybody wanted to do that.
Yeah, that'd be great. And there's
Great.
yeah, there's always a donate button, and or also you can send me a message if you want to do it directly to the project.
Okay, awesome. Does
Hi, it's
anybody
Barbara.
else? Just came.
I'm sorry,
Oh,
my
that's
machine
okay.
would not unmute. I was not ignoring you. My understanding of 1080 is that if an animal ingests it, then if that animal dies and is consumed by another animal, the poison continues. So I
That's
was
correct.
just curious because I know it is used in Australia and I didn't know how far they would roam.
Yeah. That's actually, yeah, I understand the question now. Thank you, Barbara, for explaining again. Yeah, that is true that the 1080 goes on in like the next animal that eats this poisoned animal. In terms of horses, obviously it's not a concern for us because obviously the horses are not going to eat an animal that would have been maybe poisoned. I guess in general, yeah, it's a risk. It's not really something we think about a lot. Also, the time I've been working there, we have not been aware of any like 1080 killings, or at least like organized killings in our area. Because these sometimes can also be that they're like organized by the government as well, right? So in certain parks and stuff, when you go here into the bush, you can see sometimes signs that say like don't touch, for example, a dead animal because 1080 has been placed in this area. So to kind of warn people that this is actually going on. So that's why it's not really a big topic for us.
Understood.
Thank you very
I
much.
hope that
Understood. Thank you.
Let's see. I do have one more question. Do you have anything to do with the Timor pony? I follow them a bit, and they are also in the Northern Territory, and some of them are wild. Timor pony?
so TIMOR.
Yes.
No, we actually don't have anything. We don't have a Timor pony or anything on our land, and yeah, no.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. This has been incredibly informational. I think we all feel a lot more connected to a very similar issue that you are working through and navigating across the world. So this was wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, and yeah, keep on the good work.
Same. And thank you for
um,
sharing your information. I hope everybody feels that they can connect with Viktoria anytime you want. And this
you.
information will be on YouTube shortly through Chasing Horses, Wild Horse Association, and through Save Our Wild Horses. As soon as we can get this information up on YouTube.
Great.
Thank you so
Well,
much,
thank
Viktoria.
you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Talk soon.
Thank
Bye.
you,
Thank
Victoria.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me.